What is up, my friends? Welcome to Flippin' Bats. The off season rolls on. I can feel it. We're getting closer and closer to some big things happening. Some big things have already happened. Not necessarily signings, but Roki Sasaki is officially coming to Major League Baseball. And if you listened last week, I said that there's not a world in which Roki Sasaki is coming this year or next because it makes no sense for Chibilote to post him. But they did. And I'm excited about it. But I'm going to talk all about it, where I think Roki Sasaki is going to sign, and really just all about him, who he is, how good he is, and his journey to getting here. Because I think he is immediately going to be one of, if not the best free agents available, pitching wise. Obviously, Juan Soto is the best free agent out there, but I know Corbin Burnes is a free agent, but I think Roki Sasaki will be the most coveted free agent pitcher available. So going to talk about him. Also, my top five, some free agent predictions, some of the biggest out there, and where I think they're going to end up. We're going to talk Corbin Burnes, Alex Bregman, Max Fried, Pete Alonso, and Roki Sasaki. My predictions for all of those guys, and then some fan questions at the end. A lot to talk about today. Let's get to it. First up, Juan Soto. Talked about him all last week. That's why he will not be in my top free agent prediction discussion, because I said last week he's going to the Mets. Juan Soto is signing with the Mets. This week he is meeting with the Toronto Blue Jays. After that, next up is the Boston Red Sox. He is then meeting with the Mets. And then the Yankees after that is his order of business. I have heard that it's not going to drag on too long. This offseason in general with free agents hopefully isn't going to have the same pace as it did last year. Soto kind of setting the market. So, and I've heard he wants to make his decision sooner rather than later. So I personally, the teams he's meeting with is scheduled. I also think those are the teams that he has the best chance of signing with. I don't really see another team swooping in there. Obviously, I think he's going to the Mets, but Mets and Yankees are the two biggest at play. Blue Jays had that 700 million that was waiting for Shohei Ohtani, still just sitting there. Where's that going to go? And I do think the Red Sox can make a big splash this offseason. So we'll see. Really, the only team so far that's been doing much is the Angels, if we're considering much, signing Kyle Hendricks, who is not going to be around for much longer in baseball. Really like Kyle Hendricks, but not the best pitcher anymore. Maybe he'll have a resurgence out there, but for the Angels to sign Kyle Hendricks and think that's going to be the start of turning it all around, that's probably not the case. They did sign Travis d'Arnaud. They traded for Jorge Soler, so they're making some moves. Travis d'Arnaud will probably be mostly a DH with Logan O'Hoppe there, but then Jorge Soler, what are you going to do with him? I don't know. The Angels are a mess, but they are making moves. Travis d'Arnaud, Jorge Soler, Kyle Hendricks, all signing out there so far. But some big, big free agents out there. This is going to be quite the offseason. A lot to happen with a lot of these free agents out there, and we're going to talk all about it. But first off, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can watch every single thing we do on our YouTube channel at Flippin' Bats Pod. Flippin' Bats Pod YouTube channel. Leave a comment, like it. That all really helps. Leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform and follow. That all really, really does help, and I always really appreciate it. But let's talk free agents. We're going to talk Corbin Burnes, Alex Bregman, Max Fried, Pete Alonso, and Roki Sasaki. Let's start with Corbin Burnes. My prediction for Corbin Burnes, I just mentioned it a little while ago with Juan Soto. I think, not that I think Juan Soto is going there, but I do think the Red Sox are going to make a bit of a splash this offseason. I think they're going to be in the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and I do think they ultimately end up with Corbin Burnes. I think it's a place that the fan base is getting a little restless. People are a little frustrated, a lot frustrated at the Boston Red Sox and the way they've been going about things lately. Not even just lately. Let's step back to Mookie Betts. You know, Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts. You had a core that won a championship that you've just kind of let walk out the door. You could have had Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, and Rafi Devers, and you've just kind of let that get away from you. It's the Boston Red Sox. I think they're going to get back to making a splash. My prediction for Corbin Burnes is that he ends up with the Boston Red Sox long term and is a really, really good pitcher there for a long time to come. So obviously a tough division in the AL East, but I think the Red Sox make a splash this offseason, first off with Corbin Burnes. Next up, let's talk Alex Bregman. Where is Breggy going? A lot of talk, seemingly, that he was leaving the Astros, right? So let's step back. Middle of the season, you start hearing, okay, they're not getting a deal done. This isn't looking good. Astros still need to go get Kyle Tucker. There's still a lot that needs to be done. They went and signed Jose Altuve for the rest of his career. Alex Bregman not having a great year. Well, the second half really turned it on. And then last game of the regular season at home, they sort of just give him his like flowers. Walk him off the field. Crowd goes crazy for him. Potentially his last regular season home game at Minute Maid Park. And then conversation kind of just turns to, yeah, I don't think Alex Bregman's staying. Then the season ends. Season ends. Conversations start to be had. Dana Brown, GM of the team, is asked about Bregman and says, look, Bregman is a priority for us. As far as we are concerned, Alex Bregman will be a Houston Astro next year. Jim Crane, obviously very committed to winning, says as long as he is there, the window will always be open. I think Alex Bregman is ultimately going to stay with the Houston Astros. Bregman just feels like an Astro. Feels like an Astro for life, to be honest with you. I don't see him going anywhere, but I do think there's going to be some big players here. I think the Yankees are going to be in on Bregman as well. Getting somebody over there at third base to lock that down would be huge for them. But ultimately, I think Alex Bregman wants to be a Houston Astro, and I think he's going to be a Houston Astro when all is said and done. So give me Alex Bregman to stay with the Houston Astros. Next up, another huge pitcher available on the market, Max Fried. A lot of discussions about him. Does he go back to Atlanta? Where does he go? I am going to say Max Fried does not stay in Atlanta. The Braves deserve a lot of credit for the way they go about things with their contracts and betting on certain players and keeping them there. But once it gets to a certain point, typically once it gets to this point where Max Fried is, they're not going to sign that guy long term. Look at Freddie Freeman. They let him get to free agency. Ultimately, really from the sounds of it, didn't give a very competitive offer, and Freddie ends up in Los Angeles. When you are a guy for the Braves, they get you in-house and they sign you. Let's look at the younger guys. Ozzie Albies, Ronald Acuna Jr. signed those guys really young. Austin Riley signed him really young. Michael Harris, Spencer Strider, really young. They bring in, they bring in their catcher and they end up signing him long term the second they bring him in-house. So when they get their guys, ultimately what ends up happening is they don't let it get to free agency. We saw it get that way with Dansby Swanson. Guess what? Well, Dansby didn't end up re-signing there. I think these guys ultimately, we saw it from Freddie Freeman's reactions and his face. Freddie wanted to be an Atlanta Brave, but he ended up getting to free agency, and ultimately that didn't end up happening, and he went elsewhere. That's what's happened with Dansby. That's what's happened with Freddie, and I think that's what's going to happen to Max Fried. If you don't get brought in and signed immediately, it ain't going to happen. Even if they trade for you. Sean Murphy, bring him in. They sign him to an extension immediately. So I think Max Fried is going elsewhere. I think Max Fried is going to the Chicago Cubs. Cubs got some money. Cubs are ready to spend. Cubs are on the cusp of being a good team, but they're just missing something. And that something is pitching. They were running Kyle Hendricks out there every fifth day. He had close to a 6 ERA. The guy just wasn't throwing competitive pitches. I think bringing in another pitcher to pair with Justin Steele, to pair with Shota Imanaga is going to be huge for them. And I think they add another ace of the staff type guy to the top of that rotation. I think Max Fried ends up with the Chicago Cubs. That's my prediction for him. Next up, let's talk Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is going to be one of the biggest bats available come the this free agency, you have some other first basemen out there. Christian Walker's a big name available. But Pete Alonso is a big name here because of the thump he brings to the middle of the lineup. Obviously connected with the Yankees. There's talks there about him signing there. I've heard talks with obviously re-signing with the Mets, and then the Cubs are in play. Here's what I think happens with Pete Alonso. I think Pete Alonso is the definition of a New York Met. I don't think he's going anywhere. Pete ain't going anywhere. Pete's going to resign. Pete's going to be the first baseman for the New York Mets. Pete was born to be a New York Met. Love that about him. I think he stays there, and I don't really see him moving anywhere else. I would say, I just think when it comes to the money aspect, Steve Cohen is going to. I don't think Steve Cohen is reckless by any means. Look at what he did signing Justin and Scherzer and getting those deals done. Those weren't reckless. They just didn't necessarily work out for him and the team. And what he did was spun it around into these prospects that you've now totally rebuilt. Yeah, you can look at those contracts as failures for the Mets because that season blew up and ended up having having the highest payroll ever and not making the playoffs. Sure, but that ended up just being money spent to replenish the farm system because you then trade Justin and trade Scherzer for some big time prospects and replenish the system. And now you have around a top 10 farm system. He doesn't spend recklessly, but he spends to win. And I think he's going to spend to keep Pete Alonso in a New York Mets uniform. That's ultimately, I think the polar bear ends up staying and is there for his career, really. So I'm going to go Pete Alonso sticking with the New York Mets. Lastly, let's talk Roki Sasaki. In my opinion, the biggest free agent pitcher available. That includes Corbin Burnes. Why? Well, it's because Roki Sasaki is 23 years old and is going to be an absolute superstar. My prediction for Roki Sasaki is that he signs with the Los Angeles Dodgers. It seems like the popular pick here because I think it's a no-brainer. You got Shohei there. You have Yamamoto there. Team Japan WBC teammates. They won the championship together. They were in the rotation together. They're obviously built to win over the next decade. If I'm a 23-year-old superstar, phenom Japanese pitcher coming over to play Major League Baseball, and you say, where do you want to sign? Where do you want to play for the next decade? The answer is the Los Angeles Dodgers. And we can look into other things. We can look into other teams and the money aspect involved with him coming over at 23 years old as opposed to 25 years old. We can talk all of that. But to that, I just say, let's pump the brakes here. Why? Tell me why he's not going to sign with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and then we can have that other discussion. He's a Dodger. He's going to be a Dodger. He wants to play with Shohei. He wants to play with Yamamoto. They're all good friends. They were teammates. They're champions together, and he has the ability to be a champion for the next 10 years with them. 10 years plus. He's 23. Obviously Shohei and Yamamoto are a little bit older, but if he wants to win, Dodgers are a great place. If he wants familiarity with Japanese teammates, Dodgers are the place to be. If he wants to sign a long-term deal once he turns 25, Dodgers are the place to be. So for me, I have Roki Sasaki signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Those are not my top 5 free agents, just 5 big-time free agents and where I think they're going to sign. Roki Sasaki with the Dodgers, Pete Alonso back to the Mets, Max Fried to the Cubbies, Bregman to the Astros staying there, and Corbin Burnes to the Boston Red Sox. As we get further and further into free agency, can keep talking some other names and where I think they're going to sign. But to really get this free agency period started, 5 of the biggest names and 5 places I think they finish up. But I do want to talk a little bit more about Roki Sasaki. Let's talk about this guy because obviously he's a big name. And if you don't know a ton about NPB or weren't super locked in the World Baseball Classic, or really just aren't super in the know with baseball, maybe you don't exactly know who Roki Sasaki is and why I'm sitting here saying this guy is going to be the best free agent pitcher available. Go get him with everything you possibly can. Let's backtrack to last week. I didn't think Roki Sasaki was coming over because he is under 25 years old, which makes the signability of a player a little bit different. The team that he was with, the Chibalote Marines, gets a posting fee when a player leaves MPB and comes to Major League Baseball. It give or take a little bit depending on the contract, but 20% of what they signed for ends up going to the team. So Roki Sasaki, because he comes over before he's 25 years old, can only sign via the international signing bonus pool and sign a minor league contract. Essentially, the highest he can possibly sign for. I went into it in great detail last week. The highest he can sign for is $7 million, and then he's going to sign a minor league deal. 20%, let's call it between $1 and $2 million, is what Chibalote Marines will end up getting for Roki Sasaki. Compare that to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who waited until he's 25 for his team Oryx Buffaloes to give him up and to post him. They ended up making about $50 million from his posting. So about 50x is what they're going to get compared to what Roki Sasaki's team is going to get. So that is why I didn't think he would come over, because I didn't think there was a world in which Chibalote Marines would allow him to post instead of just waiting the 2 years because they get so much more money. But honestly, didn't have the best relationship, the two teams, over the past few years. Roki Sasaki said as much. He said, I am very grateful to the team for officially allowing me to post. There were many things that did not go well during my 5 years with the Marines, but I was able to get to this point by concentrating only on baseball. With the support of my teammates, staff, front office, and fans, I will do my best to work my way up from my minor contract to become the best player in the world, so that I will have no regrets in my one and only baseball career and live up to the expectations of everyone who has supported me. Some interesting things in that statement. Obviously, where he said many things did not go well during his time with the Marines, but just the fact he's foregoing. If this was about money, he'd obviously just wait 2 years and sign a massive deal. But that's not the case. He wants to win. He wants to be the best in the world, and he wants to come over and start his Major League Baseball career. So when we're talking where he's going to sign, and I will have a bit of a deeper conversation about that. I know I said Dodgers, but we can talk a little bit more about that. If it came to money, then he wouldn't be signing now anyway. So yeah, some teams will have 7 million available in their signing in their international pool. Some teams will have a little less. To me, it doesn't really. We're splitting hairs here when it talks about what he's ultimately going to make in his career. And if money was a big factor, he wouldn't be coming right now anyway. Roki Sasaki is 23 years old. He really burst onto the scene 5 years ago during Koshin, which is the massive, massive, massive high school baseball tournament in Japan. Think of it in a sort of like, I guess you could say, the College World Series, but it's a much grander scale, and it's just obviously high school athletes. But really, he burst onto the scene there in an 8-day period during Koshin 5 years ago. So he was 18 years old? In an 8-day period, he threw 500 pitches. That includes a 12-inning, 21 strikeout, 194 pitch complete game for Roki Sasaki then. And then in 2022 for Chibalote, threw a 19 strikeout perfect game. The very next game that he started, he threw 8 perfect innings before being removed. So almost back-to-back perfect games, but ended up getting removed after 8 innings in the second start. And then we saw him in the World Baseball Classic. He throws 102, 103 miles an hour. He has a low 90s splitter. That is his best pitch. It's absolutely filthy. And if you compare Roki Sasaki's numbers to Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto in Japan, well, Roki leads in just about every category over the course of their careers. WHIP, strikeout per nines, 11.5 K per nine. That's insane. walks per nine, hits per nine. He leads those guys in all of those. He had 505 strikeouts and 394 innings pitched. ERA wise, Roki was a 2.10 career ERA in MPB. Yamamoto did lead that. Yamamoto had a 1.82. But let's not forget, Yamamoto came over at 25, Roki coming over at 23 years old. From the World Baseball Classic, talked to Rowdy Tellez right around that time, who was playing for Team Mexico. I asked him about Sasaki. I said, well, how good is this guy? I mean, it looks unbelievable. He said he is unreal. He's unbelievable. If he came over right now, and this was almost 2 years ago, so he was 21 years old. If he came over to Major League Baseball right now, he would be an ace on 25 of 30 teams. Ace of a staff on 25 of 30 teams. So this guy's, needless to say, the real deal. And he's going to be an absolute bargain to all 30 teams. That's why everybody is in play here. He's a bargain to all 30 teams. You can't sign him to a $300 million deal right now. He can only sign a minor league contract, and you can only give him what you have available in your international signing bonus pool money. So he could potentially sign anywhere. I have him going to the Dodgers. I think the Padres are really at play here. Roki Sasaki and Yu Darvish are very close. Yu Darvish is a mentor to Roki Sasaki. Roki Sasaki's slider was developed with the help of Yu Darvish. They do have the same agent as well, which take that with a grain of salt because, Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki have the same agent as well. But there are a lot of signs pointing to the Padres. Obviously, a very close relationship with Yu Darvish, a mentor of sorts, but have become very good friends. They play on the West Coast, which I think a lot of Japanese guys like, staying on the West Coast for Japan to be able to watch them easier. There are teams that play. Obviously, the New York Yankees. We don't know what Roki wants, right? If he wants to build his own path, well, that's probably not with the Dodgers, right? I mean, that's what Shohei did. It's not this far-fetched thing. Shohei didn't want to play with the Seattle Mariners because of Ichiro and the legacy that Ichiro created there, and didn't want to step on those toes and wanted to sort of create his own path. Well, then Shohei did that and has certainly done that and more. The media that comes along with playing with the Dodgers. I mean, it's there for all the reasons that I say it's a certainty he's going to the Dodgers. That's my belief. There is absolutely an argument on the contrary that Roki doesn't want the spotlight. Roki wants to create his own path. Roki wants to play with Yu Darvish. Roki doesn't want the media. If you go to a Dodgers game right now, it is unbelievable how much media is surrounding that, how much Japanese media is surrounding that team. Maybe Roki doesn't want that. Maybe Roki wants to be with a team that that is known for developing players. Maybe he wants to play on the East Coast. Nobody knows, right? His agent, his family. Nobody knows what Roki Sasaki wants other than those people. The teams don't, nobody does. So we don't know where he's going to sign. I believe it's going to be the Dodgers, but it certainly could be elsewhere. If it is the Dodgers, then we're talking about a rotation of Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Roki Sasaki, and then who even knows for the fifth? Some version of Clayton Kershaw or Bobby Miller, or I don't know. It doesn't really matter. That would be absolutely insane. But clearly Roki Sasaki wants to come over and be known, in his words, as the best player ever. Right now, Shohei Ohtani is known as the best player in baseball, and with the possibility of being known as the greatest player of all time. Can you be known as the best player ever while you're playing on the same team as the best player ever? Or is it easier to be known as the best player ever if you go out and beat that guy? That's another possibility. Maybe he doesn't want to play there because he wants to beat Shohei and he wants to beat Yamamoto. Certainly a possibility. But we will see. He is going to be certainly highly coveted free agent from all 30 teams because everybody has the capability of signing him right now. But again, because I don't think money is a big factor here. You can only sign him for up to $7.1 million if you have all your pool money available. And if it was all about money, he'd come over in 2 years anyway. He is a bargain, the ultimate bargain to all 30 teams currently. But one of my last thing on Roki Sasaki, one of the greatest, I don't want to say greatest stories, but one of the most heartfelt stories from baseball over the last couple of years comes from Roki Sasaki. And it really happened during the World Baseball Classic. But when Roki Sasaki was 9 years old, so in 2011, he lost his father, he lost his grandparents, and he lost his home to the massive tsunami in Japan in 2011. Um, and then that same day, the exact same day of the tsunami, 12 years later, Roki Sasaki made his World Baseball Classic debut for Team Japan in the Tokyo Dome. And the crowd knew it. It was an emotional day. He was great. Really just one of it, it was his dream, in his words, to play for Team Japan. And to be able to make his debut in the World Baseball Classic 12 years to the day of such a devastating tsunami to him and his family, but Japan as a whole, man, what a heart-wrenching story. And just I just remember it at the time. And it was during the World Baseball Classic when I was waking up at like 3, 4 in the morning to watch games, and I was sitting on my couch at 3 in the morning just bawling, crying, hearing this story and feeling for him and all the emotions of happiness and sadness and everything he must have been going through. But I do remember that really well from 2 years ago, and that is Roki Sasaki, and that is who is coming over to Major League Baseball at 23 years old. He will immediately be one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. At 23, the sky is the limit for him. Development is going to be huge. He's not even in his prime. So we will see where he ultimately ends up signing. Big free agent time period right now, my friends. A lot is about to happen over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months, hopefully earlier rather than later, because we saw earlier or later doesn't really work out for free agents. We saw Jordan Montgomery. I wouldn't say that signing worked out, and he signed really late. Blake Snell signed after the season started with the Giants. Really didn't work out well until he finally got in the swing of things and then got back to his Cy Young form. Hopefully, teams and agents, I don't want to put it all on teams because maybe Scott Boras was doing a little too much last offseason, but hopefully the teams and the agents can realize what's more beneficial is getting signed early and getting teams and getting everybody situated and figuring it out. Blake Snell, by the way, free agent. Where will he end up? Time will tell. But free agency is going in full force. So naturally, we're going to do some fan questions today, brought to you by our good friend and sponsor, Go Sleeves. Go Sleeves, the best recovery tool on the market. If you're playing baseball, if you're young, if you're in middle school, high school, college, pros, this is the recovery tool for you. But with me in my life and career now, play a lot of golf, play a lot of tennis, legitimately the best thing on the market for recovery. It has the kinesiology tape inside of the compression sleeve. It is 2-in-1, and it is scientifically proven to reduce inflammation by a ton. So check that out. GoSleeves.com/Verlander. Check it all out. 15% off of every item using that link. It really is cool. I have, here's a knee sleeve right here. There's knee, calf, elbow, and a lot more to come. So check that out. But these fan questions are presented by Go Sleeve. Let's start with Elijah Smith, who asks, what would it take for the Astros run to be over? I think that question is coming because I have yet to say the Astros are done. I have said they are no longer inevitable, because inevitable is a pretty strong word to use, and they didn't get to the ALCS this year. I said they aren't inevitable, but I did last week say the run ain't over. The run's certainly not over. The window is open, and there is certainly a world in which the Astros go into the 2025 season, in my opinion, as the favorite in the American League and the best team in the American League. So Elijah Smith asks, what would it take for the Astros run to be over? One, not make another ALCS. Two, not win the AL West. Three, not make the playoffs. So to me, that question involves a little more than just answering one, two, or three. I think when it comes to um, them making the playoffs, that's going to be huge. But it's not just ALCS for me. It's not just winning the division. For me, it's sort of just looking at the roster and saying that the core of Kyle Tucker, Jose Altuve, Jordan Alvarez, Jeremy Pena, potentially Alex Bregman if you sign him back, pitching wise, Framber Valdez, um, Luis Garcia, Hunter Brown. These guys, there's still a really strong core there. So I don't know if I can answer this as one, two, or three. I would say I guess my answer would be three. What would it take for the Astros run to be over? Not make the playoffs. Um, would be my answer. But really, I think they sign Alex Bregman this offseason. I do think they do something else as well, whether that's signing a Christian Walker over at first base. I know they're in the market for a pitcher as well. Jim Crane has said, as long as I'm here, the window will always be open. I believe that will be the case. I think the Astros will sign a couple of guys and go into the season as the favorite to win the American League. I think the betting favorite will be the Yankees, but the Yankees have some issues. I want to talk about the Yankees in full and maybe in a future episode. But anyway, I don't think the Astros run is over. I think they'll make the playoffs, and then I think they're a team to be reckoned with in the playoffs, unless you're the Detroit Tigers. So, thank you for that question, Elijah. Next up comes from Harmony Davis, who asks, was Dave Roberts robbed of a Manager of the Year finalist? Now, I've been pretty critical of Dave Roberts over the past couple of years. Obviously, a very good team, very good regular season team, but a team that wasn't winning in the playoffs. And I think along with that comes fair criticism of the manager. If you're not winning in the playoffs with a really talented team, I think a lot of that is obviously there's underperformance. Mookie and Freddie didn't hit in the playoffs last year, but I think a manager is a big part of playoff success, and I think Dave Roberts deserved some criticism and some a little hot seat action. But this year, even before the playoffs, I felt this was his best year yet as manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Obviously, a really good roster. And I think we're to a point now when I look at years past of manager of the year finalists, I think we're to a point where we're almost too much writing off a manager doing a good job because a roster is really good. Again, this is voted on before playoffs start. So you can't look and say, oh my God, he won the World Series. How's he not on there? Irrelevant. I do think he was robbed of a Manager of the Year finalist. A finalist is just the top three vote getters at a position, right? They just do this to build excitement around the awards. The awards are voted on, and then whoever comes in top three, they announce those guys as finalists. So essentially, Dave Roberts was not listed as a top three Manager of the Year guy, and I think that's incorrect. I think he has a great roster. I think MVPs everywhere you look on that roster. I do think that should be taken into account, and I do think guys like a Pat Murphy with the Brewers should deserve as much or more credit because they're doing what they did with a lesser roster. But Dave Roberts, with his great roster, had so much to deal with. You had a superstar injury. You had Mookie Betts out for an extended period of time. You had pitcher injury after pitcher injury after pitcher injury. You had to deal with the Shohei Ohtani situation to start the year. You had Freddie Freeman, a heartbreaking family situation to deal with throughout the year, and then an injury late in the year. I just felt Dave Roberts did his best job yet as a manager, and I absolutely feel like he should have been in better contention for Manager of the Year, which means I think he should have at least been top three. And I think we're getting to a place now where managers aren't getting enough credit because they're doing really well with a really good roster. I still think you need to give those guys their credit. Obviously, the other guys as well in the American League, guys like an AJ Hinch, Matt Quatraro, Stephen Vogt, the guys that are doing a lot with a little. Well, the guys doing a lot with a lot also need that credit. I thought Dave Roberts did a really good job and should be in more contention than he is. Thank you for that question, Harmony Davis. Last question comes from Yotaro, who asks, if the Dodgers sign both Juan Soto and Roki Sasaki, would that make their 2025 team the best team ever assembled? Now, there obviously, this is tough to say, right? There's been some incredible teams across the course of time, some incredible Yankees teams, obviously, that you look back on and say, I mean, the greatest team of all time, you're talking a few of those old school Yankee teams, right? Now, if they sign, this is a hypothetical, theoretical question. If they sign both Juan Soto and Roki Sasaki, would that make them the best team ever assembled? You have to imagine a rotation of Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Glasnow, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki, which is insane, and then a lineup that includes 3 MVPs, and then you add Juan Soto. Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Juan Soto. I mean, this is theoretical and assuming health. If we're going to assume everybody is healthy, yeah, I mean, sure. Then yeah, if they sign Soto and Sasaki, which is just a hypothetical, and everybody stays healthy, it's got to be the best team ever assembled. You're talking 3 MVPs at the top of the lineup. You're talking about who knows what happens with Kershaw. If he comes back and is healthy, he's maybe the number 5 starter, maybe. And then if that's the case, we're talking about an MVP in your rotation with absolute 4 Cy Young contenders ahead of him. I mean, yeah, I will say yes. If they were to somehow sign Soto and Sasaki, the Dodgers 2025 team would be the greatest team ever assembled. Do I think that happens? No, I don't think they signed Soto. I think there's a chance they signed Sasaki. I do think they signed Sasaki, but it'd be just insane if they signed Juan Soto. So Yotaro, thank you for that question. Everyone, thank you for your questions. Keep getting those in. I like to do this. I try to do this every week. Get some fan questions in, hear what you guys are saying. So respond to the tweet on the Flippin' Bats Pod Twitter account. That's where I typically put out the questions. Also leave a question in the YouTube chat right now if you want. I always try and respond to everybody in the YouTube comments. It's always really fun. So thank you for getting your questions in. Thank you to GoSleeve, our partner, the best recovery tool on the market. GoSleeves.com/Verlander. Thank you all for listening to this episode. Free agency is rolling. The stove is not yet heating up, but a lot to obviously happen. It's November 13th. The World Series just ended. So it's fun to be able to talk about it. Thank you all for watching and listening. Wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you're subscribed, whether it's Apple, Spotify, wherever. Please hit that subscribe/follow button and leave a 5-star review and a comment if you want. That all really does help. Our YouTube channel, Flippin' Bats Pod. Watch there, subscribe there, leave a comment. That does really help as well. And I'm always in those comments talking back to you guys. And all social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever, at Flippin' Bats Pod everywhere. But I love you guys. We'll be back really shortly. Whenever anything happens, we will be talking about it here on Flippin' Bats Pod. Fun episode. Enjoy the week, everyone. Enjoy the free agency time period. I miss baseball. I miss baseball a lot. But I love being able to come on here and still talk about it every single week with you all. So as always, my friends, thank you all for watching or listening or whatever you do. And until next time, remember, find your bat and flip it. Peace.